my entire approach when it comes to books is not what the book can do in terms of the revenue that it produces, but what can the book do in terms of the business that it will build for you. Okay, and I'm going to show you what my business looks like. I'm not, just full disclosure, I'm not telling you to build a business like this. I'm just showing you a model on how to use a book to build something that's truly extraordinary. Okay, so if you look at a business like a gigantic funnel, I'm sure you've heard this term before, especially if you follow like Russell Brunson. I'm going to talk about it a little bit differently than a lot of other folks talk about it. But if you look at a business like a gigantic funnel, the way that a business typically works is like, if you're familiar with, like when you look at a restaurant on Yelp, you're looking for a restaurant nearby, and Yelp's like, well, that's a $1 restaurant, and you're like, well, there's probably cockroaches running across the floor. And then there's the $2 restaurant. You're like, the burger's probably going to be okay. Then there's a $3 restaurant, and you're like, that place will be great. And then there's like a $4 restaurant, and you're like, it'll probably be okay, but they'll think they're great. Kind of the way that works. Well, if you look at a business, like this is kind of the way that it works. Like as you work down into the funnel, the dollar signs just get bigger. Okay. And this whole entire zone up here is the free zone. Okay. So this is when people engage with you and your business in such a way that they can interact with you and not have to invest anything other than their time. So if you go to Instagram and watch one of my Instagram reels, or if you come to this training, actually, you're watching me, this is all the stuff that exists up at the top. All right. Now, secret number one is I put my book in this category. It's almost like an afterthought, whatever Amazon pays me on a monthly basis. I mean, it's nice. I'm not saying like I don't want to receive that. What I'm saying is it's so insignificant for the rest of the business that I simply look at my book like a way to generate two main things. Number one, I'm looking to generate leads, obviously people who are interested in my business. Okay. And the second thing, we're going to get to this in just a little bit, is what I'm also trying to create is a category of people that's called true believer. Okay. Now, for those of you who have a faith background, like if I say true believer and you're been going to a Christian church for your whole life, if you say true believer, what you actually mean is a person who's been following that faith for their entire life. So just, I'm not talking about a religious institution. What I'm talking about is someone who's so bought into the message that not only do they live the message, but they also tell the people around them about this message totally for free. Okay. There is a category of customer that is more than a customer. It's an evangelist, if you want to use the religious, like more religious terminology. Okay. And to do this, you have to build a movement. Okay. You don't just write a book, you build a movement. I'm going to give you some tips on how to do that in a little bit. My book is one of a handful of what I call lead generation sources. Remember I said there's basically two things your free thing should do, or your book should do. Number one, it should be a wonderful lead generator for you. And number two, it should indoctrinate you. I'm just going to use that word in a non-cult way. Okay. It should indoctrinate people into a way of thinking that is your way of thinking and out of another way of thinking. Okay. So if you look, for example, at the free lead sources in my business, I've got my book, I've got all the social media platforms, which, like I said, even though I'm not there, I still post there. Sometimes I'll reply or like somebody's thing on my thing. I'm not there like complete disappearosaurus, but I've got social media, I've got my website, I've got Zoom meetings that I do, I've got my email list, I've got speaking events that I do, I have other people that promote me, my events, my God Talks events, business events. The list goes on. There's like 20 different things that lead people to me. Now, in my business, and I'm not saying that this should be your business, what typically happens is most of the time, these folks will end up on my email list, and the first point of contact that somebody hits me is an event. So I wouldn't recommend this for every business. It just so happens that this works really well for my business. All of these free things for me lead to essentially like the first dollar sign on the Yelp, which are my events. My events are typically between $300 and $500. I know this sounds crazy, and I already told you this up here, I don't consider as a revenue source, even though the book brings me money. I told you probably $3,000 to $5,000 a month in book royalties. Now this event, I'll have 300 people come to this event this summer. Most people will pay between $300 and $500. Some people will have a guest that they'll bring for free, something like that. But we'll bring in, call it another $60,000 in revenue from this event. You might be surprised to know that I don't even consider that revenue, okay? Because by the time I run the event, pay my team, get the place, get the video person there, this essentially is a break-even thing, okay? So far, follow me here. So far, I've actually lost money here. Okay, I have a social media team. I have people that I pay to publish and help me with my book. I've got ads that are running, spend about $6,000 a month on ads. Okay, all of those people are leading to a conversation with me on social media or my email list. Then most of the time people come through this narrow funnel of coming to one of my live events. I just told you the revenue on the live event, probably about $60,000 in registration revenue, which I don't even consider revenue because at that point I'm simply paying all of my expenses. And you're like, oh, wait a second, this is like the worst business I've ever seen. Dude's got like no money coming in. We'll wait till we get down to the bottom of the Yelp part, okay? Because what happens here at this event is essentially two things. Number one, typically someone will become a CFL. CFL is a customer for life. Okay, that is someone who stays, pays, and refers. When you have something extraordinary, people want to know what's next. Okay, most businesses create a business to get a sale. Great businesses get a sale to get a customer. Okay, and I will tell you, you come to my events, you'll see people. I'll go like this. How many people is this your second event? How many people third event, fourth event, fifth event, sixth event, seventh event? You'll see people raise their hand on the 10th event thing. Okay, look, you have to be doing something right for someone to come back that many times. So the first step is to create a customer for life, and then the second thing is to create a true believer. Okay, now a true believer in the sense of a great business is not only a person who's bought into the philosophy or whatever the teaching is. Obviously they believe the person who is teaching, but the third thing, and this is really important, is they also become a member of the community, okay? After the conversation I had with Nicole 2 years ago, I purposely created a business that is not centered around like the guru. What I'm trying to start is an abundance-minded community of people who are helping each other out. And what happens when you build a group of true believers is the world is not dependent on you to show up and wave your magic wand and deliver. What happens is your community members begin to take your teaching and your philosophy, and they start to implement that in the lives of other people because they're true believers. And what happens when you end up with true believers is your message begins to spread exponentially. You get some more book sales, by the way, which is also really nice. And you have to actually exert less marketing effort because you start to build this wave of people who are now coming to you instead of the other way around. Okay, that's the point of the event. Okay, is to create some community, to create customers for life, and to create true believers. Now, the rest of this list here, I'll do these ones in green because they're the money. All right, so the event, $300 to $500. Then I've got products. I have a series of training products. I've got a product on communication. I've got one on time management called Easy and Light, the world's easiest time management system. I've got a program called Advanced God Talks. Those are anywhere from say $500 to $2,000. Okay. Then I've got a certification. These are people who get certified in the God Talks process and trained to go out as coaches. When people ask us for coaching on God Talks, we refer them to our coaches. That's $4,000. And then I've got my what I call my Top Gun coaching program, which is my one-on-one coaching program. Nicole was in this program for several years, and that's starts at $25,000. Okay, so the price tag on this one is $25,000 for the regular program. That's when this is the first time you get to coach one-on-one with me, and my private client program goes all the way up to $47,000. Okay, now remember all these times I told you where I wasn't making money? I want to put this in the context. There's 43 people currently in this program right now. Just for full disclosure, there were some folks. So the program 3 years ago was 18,000, and I do still have some people who came in the program back when it was that price. So I know you're going to multiply 43 by 25, which is a little over $1 million. It's not. There are some people still paying like 18,000 or whatever, the folks who were grandfathered in, but like it's still really lucrative. Okay, so like it's fascinating to me. Like, I mean, probably 70% of my income, and certainly my net income, comes in from this particular program, but maybe about 10% of my time and about 70% of my time shows up here, right at the beginning of the funnel to get people interested into coming to that. Now, the reason that I did this entire thing, there's two reasons, and then Nicole, I'll sit down and like pitch it back to you because I know I just went for a little run there. And I already told you, I'll bet you, shoot, just this year, best guess, God Talks, the book, will generate anywhere between 1.5 and $2.5 million in my business. Of that, the book sales will probably be call it $50,000. So like it's so small. I mean, $50,000 is not small. I'm not saying that, but compared to the other part of it, it's so small almost to be insignificant. Okay. Without this, without this, even with the book sales that I just mentioned, which are significant, without any of this, I'd be a struggling author. You know what I'm saying? Like struggling to make ends meet. Why won't people read my book? Well, you know what? They are. They're reading your book. It's just that you're not giving them more opportunity to engage with the content. Now, I'm not telling you to build this exactly the way I built it. I do it this way because I just realized a long time ago that when people walk into my events, we just do these events that are just, they're so different and they're so extraordinary and there's such excellence that comes alongside of it. My team is unbelievable and the audio visuals and everything, that when people walk in, they just do like, remember that old story when the Queen of Sheba came to Solomon and she was like kind of blown away, like she had no words left. That happens when people come to these events. And so we realized this is just the marquee exposure event and connection event for people. And that's what we decided to do. Okay, now, the last thing I'll say, and then Nicole, I'll pitch it back to you, is in the discussion of this little training, Nicole, I think in the email, she said something like, hear the mistake, you'll find out the mistake Ed made. Okay, so I'm going to tell everyone the mistake, Nicole. So here was the mistake, and I will tell you that this has been I'd say my biggest business mistake over the last almost 20 years of business, which is typically when I'm done communicating something, I am literally ready to move on to the next thing. I love learning new things, grappling with new concepts, and that's turned into a little bit of a business dysfunction where I will literally jump to the next thing without essentially reaping or finishing the last thing. And I was on the phone with Nicole. This is when we were writing God Talks together. And just so you know, Nicole's been a client, she's been a student, she's a friend, but I paid her. Okay, so like I signed up with her and paid her. She told me the price. I didn't talk her down or anything. I wired her half of the money and I sent her the other half 3 months later, or whatever our payment thing was. Okay, so I paid her because look, if you want to work with the best, you got to stop being cheap on your way to success. All right. And I was like, I'm going to pay her. And I was on the phone call with Nicole, and the comment that she made truly is probably a $10 million comment. Okay. So just so you know how much I value this one thing. And she said to me, she goes, you do realize that God Talks is a 10-year brand. And I have to say, I was about ready to do what I do normally, which is I'm going to write something and move on to the next thing, and there's some gifting in there. I'm not like totally trashing myself. I'm just saying dysfunctionally, if you build something, you really want to create the platform for it to, create fruit in its season for a really, really long time. And she was really right about that. And because of that, we actually built this beautiful infrastructure around this business to create 10-year longevity. We've got people, we have certified coaches, but we have coaches that train the certified coaches that aren't me, by the way. We've got a online community that essentially runs autonomously. And we have a series of audios, but those will run autonomously whether I'm there or not. And we very purposely built this really wonderful business, created it to grow, set the foundation systematically for it to be able to grow autonomously. And that came from that conversation with Nicole. So the thing that I'm encouraging you with is not only try to start a movement with your book around something like that, but get the kind of help that you need, because those tiny little adjustments, like I was a fighter pilot, and I'll tell you, if you're 1 degree off, well, you're only 1 degree off. But if you're 1 degree off after 60 miles, you're literally a mile off. After 600 miles, you're literally 10 miles off the target, and you're not going to hit the target from 10 miles away. And often our missions will go 600 miles. So getting it down to the degree is actually really important. And those comments are super, super helpful.